Welcome back to Wickerson Studios. I'm here playing around with a few things. Let's see. Back onto Niloofar Zaker's GH Python intro course. Totally worth looking into. What I grabbed here is a function she was working on later on, going through all of these sections. She had gone through basic functions, after conditionals and loops and things like that, then dealt with specifically points, and then gone on to deal with curves. And we're into the last script that she did on curves, and then we'll get into some other more complex geometries that she started to introduce, and ends in a Koch curve, or however you pronounce that. So the one we're looking into is an extension of the function on rectangle 10, 0, 10. And that was one that I was showing that she had put together very easily. But what I did was I ran that into the rotation, which she did as well. So you basically have to import Rhino script syntax, Rhino math, import math. You do have 2 points to start with, which are interesting. One thing I've done on these points is I've staggered them, and the reason I've done that, I'll just turn this off for a second and get rid of all this Rhino stuff. And what you'll see is what I have here as I go into shaded. I can click on what I have, and what's nice about that is this point can be played with, which is something I did in the last one, which allowed me to, if I take a look at both of them, it allows me to move up and down and change that geometry very nicely as it runs in the Python node. You end up with a triangle, a rectangle actually that has 1 point lifted. So that's kind of interesting what's happening. But you output all of these rectangles. And that works with what she'd introduced into her script. You can see here basically the rotation that's happening because she had done some multiplication using degrees, curves, 0.1, maths, brought in some maths and did a parameter and I called it full, a parameter to full, kind of full rotation, I was thinking when I used that. What's interesting, and I did take note, is as you understand functions more and more, obviously you can leave them blank if you're going to write in Rhino script. So if you're actually going to go in here and use tools and go into, which is it? In Rhino, I think it's, I always forget, tools, yeah, Python script. You can go in, you can run the editor here, and you can write directly in Rhino script, a Python editor, which is where I did a lot of learning before. But what's nice is you normally would have to write those in and have what parameters full. But since I'm inputting them right into the node here, I don't need them. So they still runs if I put them in. That's fine. So I just hashtag them out. But they run just fine. So if you're directly inputting them into your node. So there's something to think about if you're programming in Rhino script Python editor over here, and then you actually want to interpret your stuff over into Grasshopper. You can take some liberties and figure that out a little more. Anyhow, the script is really basically hers. It's very nice. The rotation, all I've done is staggered up 1 point so I could play with it. And then I grabbed a list item of that as we go in here. Oops. The list item and grab the ends of one of the points. So I grabbed the end. Now, what would happen if I grabbed all this geometry and had it affected by it and done the rotation? Sorry to play with this. So I've actually jazzed it up and done some funky rotation. I can rotate it around the center of the start point, or I could rotate it around the start of the end point. I don't think it makes any difference because of the position of where they are, or because of the index number of the list that I grabbed. Because here you've got polylines, and what I've done is gone in and read them all. I wonder if I put in a little index here of 2 and drop this in here, what would change? I don't think anything would change from start to end point. No, so it's all the same, which is fine. Just was thinking a little ahead of myself, and then I'm lofting between it. I'm getting this kind of crazy lofted canned form. And so instead of just having it jumbled up there, I thought, well, let's just take that through a list length, range, and Z and throw it through a move. And I cleaned a tree in the process because there were a couple of pieces that were kind of funking out on me and doing something strange. So I just, clean tree is something to consider all the time, but I've changed the numbers here. I've got 14 data coming in open breps, and I've got motion moving up 15. So you may have to play a little bit in the expression here. Back on here, and I've got my expression normally set to x minus 1 so I can handle that division. I don't mind optically what's happening and what I'm left with. I'm kind of happy with that, so I don't mind. And then what I did was I just pulled out 1 and I checked, what is that object? What's really going on in that object? And I checked it with the zebra analysis tool. It's kind of fun. The other thing that I liked was the bottom of this. As I went down, I thought it was kind of nice to take a look at that as a shape. Really nice. Think of those as kind of a weird step. So just inverting it can make for a fairly interesting, stared system. It's kind of weird. But once again, I'm not applying this to anything in particular. I'm just playing with the scripts and doing a little something that I think is very basic in Grasshopper. But once again, I'm going to go in here, and as I get better and better at these functions, I'll probably go in and start doing things like Rhino script and saying, which ones of these Rhino, what do I want to use? And there's all of these as you go through. There's quite a few functions. Now, if you think of these functions as basically the nodes that you're given, and then when you type your little parentheses, it tells you exactly what parameters are needed. Just think of that as add circle. And it says right here, you're going to need a plane of center and a radius. Well, that's not too much difference than jumping in here and grabbing a circle node and saying, oh, there's a plane and there's a radius. So you start to adjust your mind. You just open your mind clearly that this is how you have to write it if you want to see it in script on a vertical top down, and this is how you write left to right in Grasshopper. And that starts to really start making sense. And then your outputs pop out. But the problem with Grasshopper is you have so many, it's hard to see at times. You can organize this as best you can, but when your scripts gets bigger and bigger, you end up getting pages like this if they're tied together, and you're like, what does that mean? Whereas over here, you can go in, and I'm not going to leave a circle on there. You can start to nestle things into definitions and functions like this that do more and kind of disappear. And I thought that would have extended or not. I'm not sure why that's. But yeah, you can condense that, and then you can pop it out again. I'm not sure why my other one condensed and then oh, it did. What the heck? Anyway, something's going on there. It's just not really enjoying itself jumping out. This one's nice. That one, maybe because of this. I'm interested why that definition didn't run. Let me take a look down here. Rectangle 10, 4. Maybe that colon's screwing it up. Let me just try and get out of here and see if I can. No, there's something strange happening there. Anyway, you discover little different things as you go. I'm wondering why that one works so nicely as to condense itself and hide itself in. And this one's being a little stubborn. I'm sure somebody else can tell me exactly why that's happening. Anyway, basically you start wrapping your head around this and what you were doing, and then you become more accustomed to, okay, there's a list item, there's the endpoints. All of those, if they aren't functions in RS, then you're going to probably have to go up to the top, and this is where I deviate a little bit, and you probably have to start doing things like import Rhino, and then hit your dot and say, oh boy, here's the collections, here's the geometries, here's the namespaces, and you'll be able to do much more in that geometry. So then I get into that, and I'm like, now I'm dealing in actually, well, not GUIDs, but actually geometries here, and there's the namespace, and it starts to get a little trickier as you start to pull out all the information of what you'll actually need to end up finding a way to use those. And the best thing you do there is get into, and there'll be samples, things get broken down a little more, and you've got to wrap your head around more and more. But I'd say the best place to start for you is you could bring in Rhino geometry as RG and slowly make a transition over that using the Rhino developer sites. And once again, do that after you become fairly accustomed to all of these and being comfortable scripting these, which is kind of like being comfortable with knowing the nodes. Now, there's quite a few there. But that's like becoming familiar with all of these wonderful nodes that are up here in your transformations and your meshes and your curves and your vectors and your sets and your maths and your params. So you will wrap your head around it. It just takes a little bit of time. I've ended up with this kind of strange little script that I've actually played off of. I'm happy with how that's generated, even though it's just surfaces and not solids. And I can still pull some interesting renderings out of it. And I don't know. It's kind of like a nice little shot glass case cup. Like, how would I produce Dixie cups and make them a little more interesting for my bathroom? But as you are creative with this, the whole point is that you're digitally modeling, you're sculpting, whether you're a jeweler, an architect, an engineer, a designer, whatever you want to call yourself. The more and more you script in here, the more and more things are going to pull themselves out and make themselves more apparent to you. That said, I'm going to take all of these. I'm going to run that script, say I'm okay with that. I'm going to nestle that back into added into this group, and I'm actually going to disable it. And now we're going to go over to this section, which is our final section, purple. If I go back into the scripts that Niloofar Zaker had made, really nice new geometries. I think she started with this one. I did a bunch of pre-work before I got the Python node, a random tool of 12. Then she did a spiral 13, and then she did, where is it? All the way over here, the Koch curve, and she ended on 14. And then when she's done, I think I was just playing around with a little bit. She was talking about, she ends up going into these books. And I'm happy to say that Python in Easy Steps was one of the first ones I started with, and I was doing some head-first programming as well. Those were two of the first texts I actually took interest in, and it's interesting that she was pushing that same thing. Python.org is where you can go and find some information. And I hope you find this helpful. Still making some interesting geometries. What we're going to start with now is get rid of all these little, let's call them Dixie cups, and run into here. And I'll probably grab this system and just remove that from the group. I'll move over this junk for now. And I'll take this back over here and just get thinking with that. Enable it. Okay, what was happening there? And you can see I already have a script that she was bringing in and populating and moving a surface, I imagine, as I populate. She was scripting that and showing how you could gain control over that jumping around. Maybe I added the sphere, but I don't think so. What I'll try and do with that data, and that's interesting, E comes up there. I think that's pretty awesome. That's pretty, why is E? Oh, it's just because I'm printing something in the node. Not even sure what I'm doing there, but we'll get into it in a second, and I'll do something fancy with this. So thanks very much for watching, and we will just get ready to go. Once again, thanks again to Niloofar Zaker and her course that she just put out. It really has motivated and inspired me to want to do this, and I certainly want to be able to write into my Python scripts every single thing that comes in RhinoScript syntax, and slowly make that transition over to definitely make that transition over to Rhino common namespaces and see how detailed and how much into programming and plugins I can get with Python, and then hopefully make the jump over to C# again. Thanks for watching.